Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Terry Third Thursday. I am Mitch Shepard, Terry alumni board member and chair of the Terry Third Thursday. I just want to welcome everyone this morning. Thank you for being here. Before we get started, I'd like to recognize our sponsors. Synovus is our corporate sponsor, and Public Broadcasting of Atlanta, WABE. Neil Pruitt is our speaker this morning. Neil has led Pruitt Healthcare as chairman and CEO, expanding the organization to over 180 locations while modernizing its facilities and patient-centric culture. Pruitt Healthcare provides a diverse range of services, including skilled nursing, home health, hospice, and independent living communities. A prominent voice in the national healthcare policy, he served on the White House Coronavirus Commission and the Congressional Commission for Long-Term Care to improve standards for seniors. Currently, a regent for the University of Georgia, Neil holds an MBA and MHA from Georgia State University and an economics degree from the University of the South. He is also a Thomas Carlyle Scholar. Neil, come on up. Thank you.
Can everybody hear me okay? All right. Well, it's good to be with you all. I'm kind of surprised that I was asked. First of all, I'm not a University of Georgia grad. I'm the University of the South. But most of all, I'm surprised because when I'm in a room generally, and if anyone's close to the age of 70, they don't want to talk to me because they're scared I'm going to put them in a nursing home. And so we are a nursing home company, but we do a lot more. So I thought what I'd do today is tell you a little bit about myself, a little bit about our company, talk a little bit about the jobs in healthcare, and then talk about how the University of Georgia is playing a key role in preparing our state and health infrastructure for the years to come. I mentioned that I went to the University of the South. I have 3 kids. One is at the University of Georgia. He's a junior there. Very proud of him. My favorite son goes to the University of the South, and I tell all 3 of them. And then I have a daughter. Our company was started in 1969 by my father, and he was a pharmacist who graduated from the University of Georgia, and he saw a need for skilled nursing facilities or nursing homes in our hometown of Toccoa, where he was mayor. And so he started our first facility as a natural recipient of drugs from Pruitt's drugstore. And so growing up in our family business, I used to run the halls of this nursing home. He'd go there on Sundays. He would fill out the paperwork, and I would go talk to all the residents. And, you know, some of them had dementia. They would tell you stories. They were pro baseball players or football players. I'm pretty sure they weren't. But as a kid, I thought that was really, really neat. After growing up in Hilton Head, South Carolina, going to the University of the South, my dad was really proud of me because after he paid a lot of money for a private education, I decided to move to Charleston, South Carolina and cut rice fields because that's where I thought that all the females were in the world. And then spend a little time in Jackson Hole. And I tell you that because in our family company at the time, he was thinking about selling our organization to a company called Sun Healthcare. And he'd always wanted me to be in the family business. I was like, Dad, I just don't want to do it. I don't want to be in the family business. He's like, why don't you come out and have dinner with this guy and tell me what you think? And I walked away from the dinner. I was like, he's a real nice guy, but I don't think he knows much. And I think we'd be making a mistake. And it turns out that company that was called Sun Healthcare, we were going to get stock for our company, very little cash. They ended up going bankrupt. So it's like one of the best things that happened for us. And then he talked me into coming to work at one of our facilities because I thought I wanted to be a lawyer. And for all the lawyers in the room, I thought that was a great calling. And I was going to go study for the LSAT and go to law school. Well, he knew he had me. He said, why don't you, while you're studying, come work in one of our facilities? And I went and worked in one of our facilities in Lilburn, Georgia. And never will forget it. There was a sweet lady named Miss Griffin. But Miss Griffin had a lot of complaints. And she would, every day that I'd get there, she'd want to talk about the food. And she'd want to talk about the staff that wasn't being nice to her. And it taught me one of the best lessons that I've learned, because I figured out that if I took Miss Griffin a cup of coffee first thing in the morning, sat down and talked to her about her kids and her grandkids, there were no complaints the rest of the day. And my dad knew that he had me at that point because I loved the patients. And what I decided to do when I worked for the company, I knew that a Bachelor's of Arts in Economics from the University of South, it gets you almost nothing. It's not a Bachelor of Science, it's a Bachelor of Arts. So I decided to go to Georgia State and work full-time while I got my MHA and Master's in business. And got to know all the healthcare folks because at the time, that's where most of the hospital CEOs were trained, which is our natural referral source. So it was a good move for me professionally. It was a good move for me personally. And at the time, I was dating my wife. And so every minute of my day was programmed. I was dating my wife. I was going to school at night. We ended up getting married, and I thought things were humming. You know, we lived in Atlanta, Peachtree Hills, you know, right down the road from the tree house, had a great job, you know, had a great set of friends. And then all of a sudden, my dad called me, and he thought that he had a terminal condition. And it turns out that we had our banker friends, Synovus in the room. They are one of our largest bankers, so we appreciate the partnership. But it turns out there is something called key man insurance, which is life insurance if you're the primary borrower. And so he didn't think he could pass the physical, so he called me into his office and never even asked me if I wanted to be CEO of the family company. HR guy was there and announced to both of us that I was going to be CEO. And he almost fell out of his chair. I almost fell out of my chair. But here we go. And so I got to work with my dad for about 6 months and had some great conversations that a father and son should have probably throughout their lives. But just to get to understand him and understand how he approached life, and it was a great bonding experience. We were going hunting down to see Benji Deloach at Southern Woods, if you guys know where that is. And the day we were supposed to pick him up, he called me. He's like, Neil, I had the best sleep last night. You know, it turns out that it was a misdiagnosis. He got a second opinion. And that very afternoon, he was killed in a car accident. And so it sounds like a sad story, but it's really not. It's a time for a father and son to bond, and it prepares you for what's kind of next in life. But my life went from having this, what I thought was an A-plus fun lifestyle for a 28-year-old, 29-year-old, to really having to put the pieces together. So what happens in that situation, there were a bunch of personally guaranteed loans. So we were in default of all of our debt. And my dad built the company the old-fashioned way. He taught me how to do this. He borrowed other people's money to do it. And so I spent the next year of my life working our way through bank defaults, keeping the company afloat. And our corporate office at the time was in Decoa, Georgia. And so I'd get up there, be the first one in the office at 7 o'clock in the morning, the last person to leave. And we worked hard, and my friends didn't see me for about 10 years because we really worked on building the company. I was the chief salesperson. I was the chief cheerleader, chief lobbyist. We get 80% of our revenue from the government. And what we did is we went around and found family-owned nursing homes. And I somehow talked them into providing us debt, seller finance debt, and allowing us to grow. And so we, to give you a sense of our scope today, we started off when I was CEO, we had 42 skilled nursing facilities. Today we have 119, and we had almost no ancillary companies. And so in our organization, not only do we have skilled nursing facilities, and what's really interesting for those that think of us as a nursing home company, we serve more people in their homes in the state of Georgia than we do in our actual facilities. And so we grew out the full continuum of care. We wanted to be the nursing home company that didn't want you in a nursing home. And so We developed our home health programs. We developed adult daycare programs. We developed care management programs where we would send nurses out to the home to make sure mom or dad are utilizing their medications, that they're following the doctor's orders, that they are doing their rehab. And then when you come into our facilities, we send about 70% of our patients home. So most of our patients reside with us only a few weeks. And so our management philosophy is family makes you stronger. And our corporate color is green, which those of you who are scholars of Thomas Carlyle know about Goethe's theory of color. And green is the perfect balance. It is a neutral, stable color. It's a calming color. And we use that in our branding. Not only is family makes you stronger, but if you walk in our facilities, it's all the same color. We lean hard into it. Our facilities aren't your typical medical facilities that are newer. They have granite countertops, personalized satellite TV, Starbucks coffee shops. Our high-end facilities, if you're familiar with Canterbury Court or Limbrook, we have similar facilities in different markets. It's high-end, high-touch facilities. We also service rural markets, which is very different. But family makes us stronger is about who we are as an organization. I always believe that you have to surround yourself by people that are better than you are, and smarter than you are. And so our company has a great team. And when we talk about family, it's not the Pruitt family. It's our corporate family. We got one of our team members here today, our CFO, so he's going to keep me in line if I say any wrong numbers here. But family is loyal, right? Family is compassionate, right? Family has your back. And though family is not perfect, you do the best to make sure that you make everyone strong. So our mission statement is our family, your family, one family, committed to loving, giving, and caring, united and making a difference. So when we take our loved ones, your mom or dad, into our care, it's a team sport. It's our family, the Pruitt Health family, and your family trying to get the best outcome for a loved one. And if we do that every time, we're going to make a difference, and we're going to be the best in the communities we serve. Our management philosophy goes further beyond family makes you stronger. I know all of us have different faiths. Faith that plays a big role in our company. We can consider ourselves a Christian company. We believe in the power of our frontline caregivers. One of the best things that we do as an organization, we take caregivers from all of our locations. They hop on buses, and we take them to Disney World, 2 from each location, and they go through a senior caregiver program, and that's their graduation ceremony. And so when we walk around our buildings, they feel like they know management because we spend time with them. We go to ride roller coasters. We watch fireworks together. We really understand that's what makes a difference. And so we built the company, and you can see by the numbers, we are about 4 or 5 times the size we are when I took over. And again, everything was smooth. I thought, I used to work 60, 70 hours a week. I was 40, 50 hours a week. Life's good once again. And God always reminds you, because there's this word called COVID. And I never will forget, we heard about COVID in China. If you recall, it hit the U.S. in March, was when it really hit us. We had our first cases in February and so forth. But we started preparing, getting PPE, and I thought we were preparing for nothing until I was on spring break, and one of our partners can make a conference and told me, he's like, why don't you go to this banking conference in San Francisco? And everything was great. And then I got back on the plane, and everybody was in masks, right? Remember that? And a few days later, we had our first case of COVID. And if you will remember, Teams and Zoom wasn't that prominent back then. And so we would have these war calls starting in the morning. We'd have 2-hour calls in the morning, 2 hours in the evening. It's like, well, this probably isn't smart if we're in the office. So we had Teams. We're like, why don't we all go to our offices and we'll get on Teams while we're in the office? And obviously, you all know the world changed. We had groups that would go home so we could test our systems for remote work. And remember sending the last team home, and I looked at our HR persons like, they aren't coming back, are they? And so we had a couple of cases. And if you recall, the nursing homes were the villains. They thought we started COVID. They thought that we didn't do things appropriately. And we had a facility in Albany that, if you recall, was a hot spot because there was a funeral and it spread throughout the community. And we had a facility there. And so we were getting all sorts of calls from all different types of news outlets. And again, for those of you that are lawyers in the room, people like to sue healthcare providers, right? So we had a philosophy that we didn't take any press inquiries whatsoever, and that we would just try to ignore it and they'd go away, and usually they did. But at the time, folks kept calling us, and we decided to adopt what we called radical transparency. And so as an organization, we took every single media inquiry. I think my top day, I was doing 7 on-air interviews in one day for local news outlets. And then we decided to even take it further, where people saying, what are, they called, one of the questions was, how many cases do you have? And so we did the simple things. We put it all on our website. The number of cases that our patients had, the number of cases our partners had. And through this time, it was one of the best lessons that I learned, because we built rapport with the news outlets. And we realized that if we communicated appropriately, we would build trust with not only our families, but our employees. And I think part of that led to being chosen to be on the White House Commission for COVID for nursing homes. And despite your political beliefs with President Trump, I've never been a part of a more efficient government exercise. It asks us what we need. We need testing. They sent testing materials to every single nursing home in the country. What do you need? PPE. We had National Guard that would deliver the PPE. And it was funny, the best part about COVID is the government couldn't keep up. So that means it's private enterprises. We were coming up with policies ourselves without regulation. Now they've caught back up, and we did some things right, some things wrong, some things controversial, like telling our families they couldn't come inside. But we needed to do essentially what happened at a federal level. And for those of you that have followed it, it wasn't about 6 feet distance. I think our scientists knew that, and the conspiracy theories that you hear, they're right. It was never about staying 6 feet apart. What they knew and what we knew is our health infrastructure couldn't handle the surge in cases. And so it was all about flattening those curves. And it happened in our healthcare services, it happened in hospitals, it happened across the country. But we were successful in being able to do that, and I think we responded appropriately. Now, looking back, could all of us have made some different decisions? Of course we could. But what we didn't have is government telling private enterprise how to operate. We were able to come up with our own philosophies. But it took a hit on our company. So I told you everything was smooth. We were around 89% occupancy. And then we dipped down to 67% occupancy. And so we had to make some tough calls as an organization that really defined the character of who we are. We had a choice of ordering $7 million worth of PPE. And keep in mind, our occupancy is low. But we knew that we would be within a couple $100,000 of making payroll. And so the easy thing to do would have been to say, okay, we aren't going to order that. We'll take our chances. But we made the call to go ahead and make sure that our caregivers were armed with what they needed. And we saw some amazing part of humanity during COVID. I know we look back at it, everybody thinks it ruined our country, ruined the world, but we saw the best part of friends, family, team members. To give you an idea, one of my buddies was chairman of Aaron Rents. They retooled their factories to make cloth masks when we couldn't get cloth masks and delivered it to us. I had another buddy that was head of the dental association. Dentist offices were closed. They donated all of their PPE that you typically have when you go to dentist to us so that we could care for our patients. We had family members that would show up and bring food to our staff to make sure they knew they were working hard each and every day. And we dealt with something that I'll get to in a minute that reshaped our state and our country forever, is we dealt with a change in the workforce. Because the fact of the matter is, a lot of nurses, caregivers, meantime, are second earners. And a lot of them are in their 50s or 60s. And if you have comorbidities, which is high blood pressure, asthma, diabetes, things that make you more susceptible of COVID, you left the nursing profession altogether during that time. So we're left with a huge hole in caregivers. And so the reason we weren't at that 67% occupancy was not because with the patients, we didn't have the patients. It's because we didn't have the staff. And if you look at one of the articles in the Wall Street Journal, you can see that healthcare as a job creation is a real big part of our infrastructure, right? If you took healthcare jobs that were created in our economy across the nation out, many of you know we would actually be at a job loss. So healthcare is fueling our economy. We know that Georgia is the #1 state to do business. Y'all have heard that, right? I had the pleasure of serving as the chair of the Georgia Chamber with Chris Clark, with a number of organizations. I've worked very hard for many years to make sure Georgia is one of the best places to do business. But I'm going to show you some stats here on the screen. I won't read all of them to you. But we have a huge population that's growing over the age of 65. And if we want to remain the #1 place to do business, we have to be the #1 state that have a health infrastructure. Because when companies relocate to Georgia, they want to know two things. They want to know about our transportation and logistics, and we have some work to do in the city of Atlanta if you drove for far away. And they want to know about healthcare. And what you can see here that I think should alarm all of us is 10 counties in Georgia don't have any physicians whatsoever. And 82 of our 190 counties don't have any OBGYNs. There are 41 states in the country that have public medical schools, right? And the amount of physicians that we produce per 100,000 population, what rank do you think we are? Anyone have a guess? 41. We are dead last in the number of physicians that we produce. And that's alarming. In our nursing schools, you're going to see that there's be a 20% shortage of nurses by the year 2035. So while you may not be in healthcare, that should alarm us if we want to keep our economy growing as a state, if we want to make sure that we are still the #1 place to do business. It's important to Pruitt Health because out of the 159 counties in the state, our employees live in 150 of them. So the math tells you a lot of our employees live in counties that don't even have a physician. A lot of our employees live in counties that do not have OBGYN. We hired almost close to 12,000 people last year, and we need to make sure that they are cared for in the communities that they live in so they don't have to travel, take time away from work, et cetera. It's not only important to our state, it's important to Pruitt Health. But one of the things I just want to close on telling you is UGA has played a vital role in that in the university system of Georgia. We had just received preliminary LCME accreditation for the new med school in Athens, which I'm very excited about, that will help this problem as well. And the Board of Regents also improved a new nursing school. So if you all can imagine the health science campus, we're going to have a nursing school, a med school right in the heart of Athens. And we were one of the few universities, I believe, 13 across the country, that will have agricultural, veterinary medicine, med school, all tied into one. We have a real opportunity as a state to build something great at the University of Georgia that will drive our economy, that will drive the state, and will drive our infrastructure. But, you're saying, well, there was a partnership campus. If y'all recall, that partnership campus was actually an MCG institution that was located on the University of Georgia. What we did is we took those students and gradually replaced them down Savannah with a new campus of MCG down there. So the University System of Georgia is working hard to make sure that we are right-sizing our health infrastructure. The University of Georgia is playing a large role of that. And if we do that, we are going to be able to make sure that healthcare is strong at the state and our economy is good in the state. And so, we talked a lot today, and I'll open up here for questions in a second. But I'll leave you with this. I hope throughout your story, my story here today, you've seen that, God gives us challenges that we must overcome at certain times. We at Pruitt Health have a great team members that have risen to every occasion. I'm so proud to work side by side with them every day. And I'm reminded of this story. I told you I went to the University of the South, which is an Episcopal education. All my kids went to Holy Innocents, which is Episcopal education. And when they were growing up, you get hectic in life, right? It doesn't, as you get older, it doesn't change. It's parents' weekends, but it used to be, soccer practice and, picking so-and-so up. And we always prayed beforehand. And in the Episcopal tradition, when you say God is good in the Book of Common Prayer, it's all the time. And my kids remind me when we were going through this is that I started off, and it was one of those days, and I was praying. I was going, God is good, God is great, the normal thing. And I said, God is good. And all three of them said in unison all the time. And so I leave you with that story because I believe God's blessed our state. I believe God's blessed the University of Georgia, and God has blessed our company.